And at this point, I'd like to open the meeting to the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Jim from Arizona, go ahead.
I am most grateful for Christian Science and for its inspiration. Recently, my housekeeper had to retire because of illness. I'd already given her a Science and Health, and she came by just recently to bid me goodbye, and her mother came with her. And I suggested to her that she has everything she needs, and she said, well, it's still difficult for me to read. I said, well, you can have somebody read for you. And her mother pointed to herself as if, I will do it. That gave me an inspiration to talk to her, and I said, would you like a copy of Science and Health? I sure really would. And I was able to give another. I am so grateful.
Well, thank you, Jim, for your work and being willing to pass out this precious book, because it has helped and healed many. Thank you. Okay, Gary from New Jersey, go ahead. You may be on mute where you are. We're not hearing you.
I just want to say how grateful I am to have a church that represents very, very well the church that Mrs. Eddy established over 100 years ago. The structure of truth and love. This church is not an organization. It is not a human organization. It is God's activity. And I am so grateful for all the testimonies, for the readings tonight, and to be a member of this demonstrating church. Thank you all.
Thank you.
603-359.
Okay. Someone is called from area code 603-359. Can you please announce yourself and then go ahead with your testimony?
Yes, thank you. This is George from Vermont. Last month, in the June 14th lesson, that lesson has impacted me more than any lesson I can remember for at least a very, very long time. And I tend to be a worrier or someone who just, when things get tough, I just sort of ramp it up and just try harder and get frantic at times. And this lesson was exactly about behaving in an opposite way, trusting God. For instance, it says, thou shalt know that thy tabernacle should be in peace. And then from Isaiah, in returning to the rest, you shall be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. And then thine ears shall hear a word behind me saying, this is the way, walk ye in it. And I feel that God just gave me the ability through this wonderful lesson and the ability to absorb this truth or to believe it and to act on it. And the weekend before last, we had a memorial service for my mother who passed away in last October. And I had children and family from all over the U.S. and even across from Europe. It was just an amazing day. And just before the service, I realized that I had forgotten to get a book published of her pictures. And this is something that my son-in-law put a lot of time into, and it was basically a memorial book of her life from when she was a baby till just before she passed away. And it was meant to be a major part of the service. And just a few days before the service, I realized I had not gotten it printed. It somehow fell through the cracks. But because of this lesson and because of the grace of God, instead of going into a full-scale panic and beating myself up and all the things that I would be tempted to do, I stayed calm and trusted God, and we thought of a local printer rather than the online service we were going to use, who was able to do it in just a couple of days for considerably less money than we would have spent online. And I want to thank God for that, for allowing us to have the book published, but mostly that I was able to trust Him, and because of this lesson, and to change the way that I operate when I get worried or afraid or I think I've made a bad mistake or something like that, and to trust Him and to watch His beautiful loving kindness just take care of everything. So I continue to read this lesson along with the newer ones on at least an every other day basis, and thank the Plainfield Church for putting the lesson together and for allowing me to be blessed by it. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. Thank you very much for the beautiful readings. This evening, I'd like to express my gratitude, like the previous testimony, for the good care that God has for us, and for this beautiful science, and for the Plainfield Church, and the wonderful patient support that I receive from a Plainfield practitioner. A few weeks ago, I was going to be involved in an activity at work that I have come to dread over the 10 years that I have been here with this company. It involves about 500 children, and it usually feels very long, exhausting, and especially since it takes place outdoors all day on very hot days. And I was gearing up for this, but in a very negative way, weeks before the activity. I realized I needed a new attitude, at least a positive one, especially from all the stuff that I have been learning here at Plainfield. So I began using many of the tools that I have been given through the different classes and from my practitioner. I started to switch my thinking. For example, I started to pray when I would hear the weather forecast that would predict very horribly hot weather. And I started to think about the children and the joy that was going to bring the children, and to see individuals that I'd be working with as representatives and ideas of God, and see them in a different light, and started to find things to be gratitude for. And this outcome was actually very blessed. I would put God first, and I put complaint, irritation, and resentment. I replaced them with love and joy, and I experienced peace up to this day and it came. And it was really beautiful. Some very practical ideas for myself came. I noticed there were adjustments made in the program that made it more comfortable and flowed more beautifully for everybody involved. And I think God has a little bit of a sense of humor, because this year they split it up and did it over 2 days. And then not only that, I had to do an extra duty that a lot of other people didn't have to do because of the group of kids I worked with. And I started to get upset when I found that, but I turned it around, and it gave opportunity to be more positive and knew that God was going to perfect that what concerneth me. And I had the strength that I needed to complete those 2 days that I had to do these activities. And a very sweet end of the program. Used to be in the past very competitive and not always nice, but this time it was friendly, and they found a comfortable spot for everyone to watch it, and it was just very sweet and kind, and it was very beautiful experience altogether. And so I'm so grateful to find these beautiful practical ways that God can touch our lives, and I'm so grateful for the things that I am learning to change my attitude altogether. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
And thank you. Chardell from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Hello. Tonight I would like to express my gratitude for all of Plainfield Church by telling you about a toy my little grandson has at his house. This toy is a flat, magnetic, shiny board run by batteries that begins with a main colorful gear that lies flat and turns around and around. Other gears are added carefully, and they are all unique but connected to each other. They all help each other move, and it is lovely to watch. To me, this is how Plainfield Church works. All the intricate parts of this church run out from the center with balance, beauty, and precision. Each part cannot turn or run without the main gear. Thank you, Plainfield Church, for everyone everywhere doing his or her part for the benefit of all mankind. And thank you for the readings and the hymns. Thank you for everything. Good night.
Thank you.
Our practitioner, one of them, has been helping me for a while now, and because I'm looking for a right job to move into. My other one had ended, but I had some good support financially during that time. Started with the practitioner told me that from end of 2 Kings 13, your allowance is from God, from the King. That a daily allowance that will continue forever, and it has. And I found that this has been a very important time because I sometimes feel soul sick when I'm not really doing anything important. And then I fall into the trap of just kind of living, going on, and really not doing a whole lot, but just living day by day. But during times when I'm in between jobs, I have to really strive to prepare myself for the next thing and find out what God wants for me to do. And I thank God for practitioners. I was told that God has a wonderful place for me, a wonderful work for me, and I'm a blessing. And I work every day with I'm going to be a blessing today, and it's been a joy. And I really met a lot of good people and had a great time. I felt whatever I'm going to be doing, it should be a continuation of what all the things that God has led me from since in the past. And so not just to be satisfied with some thing to make money, but something that was worthwhile, that blessed people. And something beautiful is coming along, about to go on my third interview, and it is a blessing. And so I thank God for sticking with me and trying to put me in a place that I would be a blessing and supporting me in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful for this week's Daily Watch, which is Watching Point 105 from 500 Watching Points by Gilbert Carpenter. In it, there is the following sentence: "One who is dreaming that a lion is about to devour him does not need to be saved from the lion, but awakened from the illusion." The other night I had a dream where I was in a dark room trying to find the light switch, and once I had, it was revealed that there were spiders and spider eggs everywhere around me. In moments I was covered and trying to get them off of me. After what seemed like quite a while, I had this little thought come in: "You're not covered with spiders, you are home and all is well." I opened my eyes and sure enough, all was well. I had been praying about that, wondering what it could mean, because I don't usually have those types of dreams. And then this morning, I read the Daily Watch and I understood. I spent my whole life stressed out about the illusion, and now Christian Science is helping me to wake up. I'm so grateful to God being with me in my darkest moments, and I'm grateful to Christian Science for giving me the tools to truly live. What God has given us is truly amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth from Georgia, go ahead.
A couple of weeks ago, my family and I boarded an overseas flight. And while we were on the plane, a man who was standing in the aisle near us suddenly collapsed. Several passengers tried to help him, and then a flight attendant called for any medical personnel on board to help, and several people answered the call. I immediately got to work mentally to refute what was happening because it did seem to be a disturbing picture, my son, who was in the aisle seat, had noticed a problem with the back of this man's head. And I could hear voices, whether it was the doctors or nurses helping him, or the man himself, saying that he had brain cancer. My prayers were mainly to know that divine love filled all space, and that this man and everyone in the plane dwells in the consciousness of God, and were embraced in his love. One passage from Science and Health that I clung to was, divine love reigns, is all, and there is no other consciousness. Because God is the only cause, this false picture or diagnosis was impossible, because it had no cause or life to it. And this is what I stuck with until I found some peace. I was also grateful to the people who immediately came to his aid and were so kind in caring for him, as I could hear their conversation. My husband, who's not a scientist, picked up the Science and Health I had and began reading the chapter on prayer. After about 15 minutes, we didn't hear any more voices, and when I got up shortly after, just to walk around, there was no evidence that anyone was in distress. Everyone was in their seats. Well, when we got off the plane in Zurich and went through security, my son mentioned to me that the man standing in front of us was the one who had collapsed. There was no evidence that any inharmony had occurred. He appeared normal and happy and was talking on the phone. I'm grateful that we have this ability to turn immediately to God to see the reality of his creation. Man is upright, pure, free, not sick or damaged or diseased. I should also say my husband told me later that he'd also felt a sense of peace in turning to God when he was reading the chapter on prayer. Just so grateful for this, and thank you for your reading.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful for a healing that I had several years ago. Ever since I was a child, around the 4th of July, I would start to sneeze and my nose would run, allergies. When I came to this church, I asked a practitioner to pray for me and could this be healed? And the practitioner said, the Bible says that God made the plants of the field. Do you think a good God would make anything that would cause you to suffer? And it just made no sense that a good God would make anything that would cause anyone to suffer. And I almost laughed at it, and that was the end of it. I have never had an allergy symptom again. It was healed that instantly, that quickly, and I am so very, very grateful to God for this. And that we learn in Christian Science that man is the idea of God. He's not a matter being that's subject to all kinds of maladies and whatnots. He's an idea of God, held in the mind of God. And that's such a comforting thought and such a comforting place to be, that God is all around us, his love is around us, his angels always caring for us. I am so very grateful to Mrs. Eddy for giving us this religion and this way of life, and very grateful to this church because this church lives it. And I'm so grateful to be a member here and very grateful for practitioner help.
Thank you. Mike from New York, go ahead.
Hello. Thank you very much. A few years ago, my wife had gotten a horse given to her, a beautiful mare, and but she had a tendency to be a little bit aggressive. So I worked through Christian Science and didn't have much success, I have to say. That one day I came into the barn and I found a pile of feathers, and I thought, uh-oh, something happened here. So I went back in the chicken part of the barn where they sleep, and I found one of the chickens had been injured, so evidently the horse had trampled the chicken. So I started with the Lord's Prayer, which is my standby, and then as I had more time to go back to the house and do more work. I worked with Hebrews 4:12. For the word of God is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the dividing asunder the soul and spirit and of the joints and the marrow. And also in Isaiah, there's a passage of that the bones flourish like an herb. I worked with a chapter on healing and science and health, and within 3 days, the chicken that had been very huddled up was able to scoot around on one leg, flapping its wings, and seemed to be doing quite well. Within 2 or 3 weeks, the chicken was fine and never would have known that anything had ever happened to that chicken.
Thank you. Day from Maryland, go ahead.
We need God every day of our lives, every hour and moment of each day. The consistent activity in this church and the resources that are continuously available are a helpful reminder that going to God is not just for Sundays, special occasions, or during difficult times. I've learned that God meets every need. This has been proven to me over and over. And He is always with me because there is never a moment when I don't need Him. Knowing this is giving me the structure I was missing for so many years and making me more obedient. And I'm so grateful to be learning to acknowledge and call on Him and to thank and trust in Him more each day. I'm so grateful for the change this has made in my life. And thank you so much for tonight's readings, the hymns, and all the testimonies tonight.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful for a healing that I had quite a while back. I had been working a few days on a project doing a lot of bending, lifting, and moving of a lot of boxes. And in that week, there was a statement in the lesson from Science and Health, which was so very helpful. And that statement was, whatever it is your duty to do, you can do it without harm to yourself. I really held on to this statement of truth. It was just so perfect. I had no soreness, no stiffness, no pain, no effect of any kind. The work just went so smoothly and perfectly. I was just so grateful for this statement and thank God for His love and His healing power. And that Christian Science teaches that I am spiritual and not material. And I'm so grateful to Mrs. Eddy for giving us this wonderful science, this way of life. And thank you for those readings.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. Tonight I'd like to give gratitude to Christian Science for how it explains what God is. I've been lately really loving using the synonyms and the qualities that they represent and making them more my own, seeing myself as those qualities, as the expression of them, the evidence of them, and seeing everyone else the same. I see that these qualities are really incredible. They represent God is here, and I see how in all temptations we can turn to any of them and have our answers right there. When tempted with sickness, I can know myself as soul's expression. Tempted with being confused, I can know myself as mind's expression. Therefore, I have the intelligence and the wisdom to do everything I need to do. The quality of spirit as substance assures my never lacking anything because there is no limitation in spirit. If the thought of unjust injustice comes, I know that principle is operating every time, and I can rely on it. Truth knows no error, so every discordant suggestion that comes, I can know that no, truth is being expressed right now. There is no error. And the temptation of lack of energy or feeling lonely or anything like that, I must know that life is here. Life is God, and I am expressing it. I am the evidence of it. So I have the vitality, the buoyancy, vivacity, and all that I need to do, everything I need to do each day. And then love, the love of God. How comforting that is to feel that I live in this love. My consciousness is that of love. Therefore, I'm complete. I am well taken care of. I am fulfilled, living in the gentleness and the tenderness of our God. I am so grateful for all these because nowhere else can we learn this truth about God and make us feel His presence here and now and whenever we are tempted. So grateful for the readings tonight, the hymns, the testimonies, and everything everyone is doing for our mission through Plainfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Dale W. from Virginia, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for the beautiful readings and all the wonderful testimonies. Many years ago, I learned that Mary Baker Eddy had the practice of opening her Bible, and whatever verse she opened to, she would instruct the students in her home. So for a long time, whenever I had a real need or a decision I would have to make, I would open the Bible or Science and Health and ask God to show me what I needed to know, and the need would be met. I found that the website of this independent Christian Science church, which is totally dedicated to Mrs. Eddy's pure revelation of Christian Science, is shining with the light of truth for all mankind. I am so grateful that when I come to this site, I always find strong and powerful words to guide me, ways that are practical to my daily living, in which I find I can share with others to meet a need. I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to share a healing that I had today. After coming from school, I had a headache, and I decided to lay down. And after a little while, I began to have thoughts of something that happened probably 30 years ago. I began to feel a little remorse and guilt. But then I started to think and meditate of all the principles of divine love that I have learned here, and how forgiveness and healing should be called upon any minute. After a few seconds, I began to feel a little relief, and my headache just started to disappear, and I began to feel joy. And I want to just give my gratitude to all the teaching and what I've learned here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary from New Jersey, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. In the responsive reading this week in the lesson, it says, speaking about God, "Restore unto me the joy of thy salvation, and uphold me with thy free spirit." At one time, I had suffered from really severe depression, and this statement helped me. The idea of restore means to bring back to its original state. Depression is no part of God's child, and whenever anyone feels it, it is important to realize that it is abnormal and it is nothing that God gives. I think through my darkness, I was beginning to glimpse that light, and I began to fight for my joy, to know that it came to me from God and that it was not dependent on outside conditions, but that it was my relationship with God. And if there was something depressing me, holding me down, I could find out what it was and to be free from it. As the second part states in that statement or verse, it says, and uphold me with thy free spirit. And that word uphold, I looked it up, it means to lift on high, to keep from falling, to keep from being lost. This is what God does for us when we reach out to him. And in doing that, the depression lifted, and it has stayed. It's never come back. I'm so grateful for this. I know that it is sometimes a problem with many people. People turn to drugs and other things for relief from it. But when we turn to God and know that He is our joy, and as Jesus Christ said, your joy no man can take from you. That's the truth. It's the joy of the Lord. I'm so grateful for this. Grateful to be here tonight. Thank you for those readings.
Thank you.